Welcome back to the internet, everybody. I hope you're ready for a great week. Yesterday I told you guys to post stories in the comments, and you didn't disappoint. There were a lot of stories in the comments. So it was a little bit hard to decide, so I pulled two stories from the comments today. This first one's from Lucy Clayton 10. This is not an entitled story, a tad revenge on a bombastic man from the gas board. One day many years ago I had bought a house. I was 21. One day a few weeks later, a knock on the door. It was a man from the gas company. He said he has come to turn off my gas for non-payment of my gas bill. He barged past me and walked into the back of the house. I sat there continuing with my project for college. After about 10 minutes, this unpleasant man came up to me and said, "Where the heck is your gas meter?" I smiled sweetly and told him I don't have one. I'm all electric, and suggested he check his court order. Sure enough, it was for 36, not 26. He shouted at me, "Why didn't you tell me you didn't have gas? You have wasted my time." I told him whilst grinning, "You didn't ask. You didn't check the house number and you barged into my house and were thoroughly unpleasant. Now get out of my house before I call the police and charge you with trespassing." That's some pretty high quality passive aggressiveness right there. And the other comment story I pulled was from Puffer Man. So I am 20 years old and autism, ADHD, and bipolar. Last week my parents sold my dresser and my collection of Girls Gone Wild VHS tapes, still in the package, and altogether they got $300. I did not get any of that money. And here comes the revenge. So my parents have this hood from an old car called a Tucker Torpedo, so I sold it for $80. You could probably guess what happened. They got mad and attempted to call the police, and I just reminded them of what they did. I'm now living with my friend who is very financially set, and got me and my money on the track to having more money than my parents make in a month. Just a side note, don't think you can bully someone just because they have a disability. The only thing I had that I am proud of is my YouTube channel, and that only has 19 subscribers. Please, for those who read this, my YouTube channel name is Puffer Man. I would really like if people who read this could subscribe to my channel. Hey, I just checked. He's up to 22 now. So good for you, Puffer Man. I don't know why I find this story so funny. So they just took your dresser and your collection of Girls Gone Wild VHS tapes? Everything about this story is just so bizarre to me. But thanks for sharing. Alright, and on to the first story from EntitledParents called "Give Me Your Seat, I Know the Owner. The Owner is the City." So while the title of this story appears cliche, I can tell you that this did in fact happen to me. As anyone in the UK will tell you, GCSE exam season is around now, and as a 16-year-old, I will be sitting them. I'm not great at revising in a home environment, so I usually go out to this cafe I know about. It's a small cafe, 5 to 6 tables, and it serves things like waffles, cakes, coffee, and tea. Literally heaven for a British person, so obviously the cafe is usually packed, meaning I was lucky to arrive at the moment someone else left, and I managed to snag a table right by the window, facing towards the street. Now this table is very much coveted, with it being right by the radiator, a great street view, a plug socket next to it, and it being near the counter that you can talk to the staff without getting up. Like I said, heaven for British. And on to the story. I turn up and order some food, and I was taken to this perfect table, lucky me. I sat down and took out some files with some past papers and some CGP revision guides for physics, and I waited for my food to arrive. A little while later, a mother, father, and 2 young children walk into the cafe. This couple seems to be sucking the life out of each other as they were standing there. The entitled mom was a little bag of bones, looked exhausted as well, while the entitled dad looked fat enough to cause a pothole just by getting into his car too fast. A waitress greeted them at the door and explained how the cafe was full at the moment, and how they could try their luck later. The natural response of a citizen of Earth would be, "Oh, sorry, I'll try again later." However, this entitled dad took one step towards her and just said, "Make room or you'll lose a customer." "Sir, can you please? How about this table?" She points at the table I'm sitting at. "I'm sure you could kick him out for us." At this point, 2 things struck me. One, they had a very thick American accent, which I'm sure not all Americans are like this. These ones were. And 2, their kids had just started to run up and down the cafe yelling, showing their parents had no control over them. The waitress says, "No, he's a paying customer." She had to start putting her foot down, moving them backwards towards the door. "Yeah, well so are we, and the customer is always right." The mom says, "Sir," yelling at me, "get out of our seats." The waitress says, "Sir, madam, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave." "Well, you can't. We know the person that owns this place." She says, "The city? We rent." "Fine, the manager then, and he'll get you fired." Someone behind the counter just turned to them and yelled, "They're a she." She says, No, he isn't. The owner is a man. Now get him." By this point, the entire cafe had stopped eating, and we were enjoying the show of a whale and a stick insect screaming things that weren't true. Me especially. The guy says, "Son," talking to me, "get out of that seat, and we'll leave you alone. Otherwise, I'll make you get out." He's like, "I'm just waiting for my food to arrive, so I'm not getting up." He says, "Just get up! You're not even doing anything!" He was hitting the table with his hands all the while. The entitled mom's shrill voice is screaming at the waitress, who I have to say was doing a great job. I'll be honest, my memory is terrible, so I'll just skip to the interesting bit. A passerby who heard what happened fetched a copper from somewhere, who showed up by the time entitled dad became angry enough to try something. He had reached over the table, grabbed my shirt's shoulder, and began to pull me up by it when the copper had just walked in. He says, "Sir, I've just received a complaint about some people yelling in here." He says, "No, officer." By this point, the couple had become model citizens and were standing bolt upright to make themselves seem innocent and holy. "I've just seen you pulling on this kid's shirt, so..." "Oh no, officer, this is my son. I'm allowed to." I say, "No, I'm not. Your kids are over there." I gesture to them, licking the glass in front of the cupcakes. Says, "Miss, can you give me your side?" Asking the waitress. She barely got a word out without the entitled mom and dad yelling about how they were discriminating against Americans, and how they should have to give them my seat as a compensation. Once they finished, the copper radioed for the car and some help, then handcuffed the entitled dad and zip-tied entitled mom, saying it was for breaching of the peace. To cut what is already a long story short, the couple spent the next 5 minutes screaming about how they would never come back to the UK, and how they'll tell all their friends about how awful the people and police are. Their kids were later picked up by some more coppers. I assumed to take them somewhere temporarily. I didn't ask. Later on, I ended up giving a hefty tip to the waitress for excellent service, and then I left. So when that entitled dad says, "The customer is always right," what happens when two customers get into an argument then? Also, I like how he says, "We will not be coming back to the UK." It's like, your country has lost my business, as if it's gonna make any difference. Alright, this one's called, "You have the same name? Change it." So in high school, I was in a pretty big class. We had 32 children, and for some reason the school administration dumped a bunch of people with the same name in my class. We had 3 Marys, 2 Daves, and 4 Marks. The guys were all joking around saying stuff like, "Hey Mark, how was your day?" "It was great, Mark. How about you, Mark?" "Yeah, Mark, it was good. Probably better than Mark's day." And that day went on and on. The Marys, on the other hand, kept fighting about who should be just called Mary and who should be referred to by their surname. After weeks of fighting, one of them called their mom to the school to persuade the other girls to back down. I don't remember the exact conversation, but that mother was talking to 2 14-year-old girls about legally changing their names. How easy it was, what awesome names they could choose, etc. The fighting finally stopped when the teachers decided that for our class, when checking attendance, they would all call out everybody's complete name. Why they didn't do that sooner is beyond me. The whole story was pretty insane, and I don't blame you for not believing it. What mother would try to talk her daughter's classmates into changing their names officially? I guess they've never heard of nicknames or anything. It's like, come on, you're gonna be in this one class for what, a few months? You think it's a good idea to change your legal name for the rest of your life over that? People are silly. Alright, this one's called, "I don't have an account." Wait, yes I do. So I work at a makeup store that gives you a free birthday gift on the month of your birthday, and all you need is a rewards account to get it. I had this little exchange today that was kind of weird. The customer comes in and says, "I want to redeem my birthday gift today." I say, "Awesome, what's the email or phone number for your account?" "Oh, I just used my friend's account." I say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't give you a birthday gift unless you personally have an account with your birthday already logged into the system." "Well, I just used my friend's." "Well, I can't give you a birthday gift and scan out of your friend's account, because then she won't be able to get her birthday gift later this year because she's already redeemed it off her account. You have to have your own account with your own birthday linked." "That's not true. I do this every year, and I've been doing it for the last 3 years, and I've never had my own account." I say, "Ma'am, I don't know what you've done in the past, but I cannot give you a birthday gift unless there's a rewards account with an active birthday on it." "That's not true. I've done it." Cue me staring at her, very confused. "Maybe I do. Try my email." I say, "Yep, you do have an account. Here's your birthday gift." I then proceed to check her purchase history, and it looks like she's redeemed her birthday gift for the past 3 years on her own personal account. I don't know why she told me she didn't have an account, and then started to make such a fuss about it when she actually did have an account. It was just so weird. Yeah, it's funny that sometimes you can just get an idea stuck in your head, and you just get so defensive about changing that idea, even if it's wrong. And we have a lot of short stories. This next one is from Petty Revenge called "Write Me a Bad Check and Then Avoid Me Instead of Paying Me Back. Enjoy Your Own Overdrafts." So a former friend asked to borrow some money to get emergency treatment for her cat. She told me she could write me a check immediately that I thought I could deposit the next day when her earlier deposit cleared. I gave her a check. When I deposited her check, it bounced. That means I was out of the money I loaned her, and the return check fee. I called. She claimed to have made a mistake and would pay me back. She said she would drop off the money, and then did not. She did this repeatedly for about a month and a half. I finally went over to her house when I knew she was home. She refused to answer the door, so I did something she did not realize I could do: redeposit the check. Except I waited until the very end of the month, so that it would clear right away, on the first of the month, when her Social Security check was deposited. Since she did not do online banking, she would not know about her money not being in the account until after she wrote checks on it that bounced. So she ended up out of the money she borrowed from me, the bounce check fee from me, and the bounce check fees from any checks she wrote thinking my money was still in her account. Man, that's a pretty clever way of getting your money back. I mean, just because the check bounced doesn't mean they're never gonna have money in their account. I mean, honestly, it doesn't surprise me that people don't like dealing with checks much these days, because it's really easy to just rip people off by writing them a bounce check. And for the long story today, we have, "Sorry, that's not my driveway. You've been very clear." So a few years ago, my ex and I rented a one-bedroom house on a dead-end street in the downtown area of my city I grew up in. We had 3 cats, and I lived close enough to my job that I could walk to work every day. The city has a poor reputation, particularly with regards to heroin overdoses, but none of that affected us. The landlord who owned my home had for some reason actually built 2 homes on the same property. Mine, a small one-bedroom home, sat maybe 6 feet from the street, and my back neighbor's home, a 2-bedroom, was kitty-cornered behind me. There was a long shared driveway on the left side of my house that ended at her front door. The number for the neighbor's house was 11.5, and mine was 13. From the beginning, we had issues with this neighbor, whom I'm hereby dub BN for bad neighbor. Her entire life would fit in the r/entitled people thread. She would frequently invite herself over to our house for dinner or drinks. She would have people coming and going loudly at all hours of the night, and frequently had police at her home to kick out various boyfriends. By the time we moved out of that house, she had had 2 people actually overdose and die in her home, and had somehow caused an electrical fire in that house that had cost about $35,000 to repair. Keep in mind that this house was maybe 50 feet away from mine, and neither home had particularly thick walls. Mostly we ignored BN. We didn't spend time with her, we didn't answer the door when she knocked, and we just left her alone. The most we interacted was when I would give her a misdelivered mail. We wanted nothing to do with her, and the hurricane of chaos that was her life. Of course, BN didn't like this. She wanted to be in control of everything on the whole street. The driveway that led up to the front door was large enough to fit 4 cars, a fairly big deal in the area with mostly on-street parking. But BN insisted to us when we first moved in that we were not allowed to park in this driveway. The driveway was only for her and her guests of the week. She said many times that she would not allow anyone to block her car in at any time. This driveway was directly on the side of my house. My desk was in our converted dining room and was right next to the driveway. Every morning there was a car parked directly next to these windows, and every morning that car started up, crazy loud because it was a real piece of crap car, at about 6 a.m., right around the time I was sitting down at my desk with coffee. Luckily, I'm a morning person. If I had been asleep during this time, I would have been pissed. I occasionally had family and friends come by and would warn them not to park in the driveway, but a few times they did. My sister was moving at one point and needed to store some things in my basement, but the only entrance was outside on the back of my house, so she pulled up in the driveway and started unloading boxes. BN flew out of her house and flipped out, but my sister has her own anger issues and handled the crazy situation all on her own. BN did this to 2 of my friends, my brother, and my mother on separate occasions. She started to flip out on my grandmother once until she saw my mother come up from the trunk of her car with his wheelchair. BN went back into her house this time, so my ex and I didn't want to deal with her. We had our own problems and certainly didn't want to get involved in hers. Sure, it means that we couldn't use the side door of our house that led out onto this driveway unless we had 2 hours to get stuck talking to her, but we decided to just adapt. We had some lawn on the other side of the house that was brown and overgrown with poison ivy. We cleared it out, filled it with gravel, and made it our new parking spot. Voila, crisis averted. Then came winter, a particularly bad winter. We had a few feet of snow piled up. My ex had gone out and shoveled out our car path from the front door to the car. He was out there every hour, clearing off the path and the car and laying down rock salt. My job was waiting until the last possible second to close, so I wasn't sure if I would be heading to the office or not. My ex kindly made sure that the car was available in case I needed it. BN was pissed. We could hear her in the driveway yelling at the boyfriend of the week to shovel. We could hear her saying all kinds of bad stuff about us, and we could hear when she broke her shovel, threw it into our yard, and stormed back into her house. Later that day, a plowing company came. 2 guys dug out the cars, let BN move them, and plowed their driveway. They even did their front steps. They were gone in less than an hour. Then the landlord showed up. The landlord never showed up at this property unless there was a big deal. My ex and I were in the kitchen at the time, which was also adjacent to the driveway, and could hear BN's loud conversation about how expensive the plowing company was, and how much snow there was still in the driveway. It was still snowing. The landlord knocked on our side door. I open it with a big smile. I say, "Hi landlord, hi BN, how are you?" She shoves this paper at me. It's the invoice from the plowing company. "So I'm sure you noticed that we had to have the driveway professionally plowed. I talked to the landlord and you have to pay for half of this bill." I say, "Yeah, I'm not going to do that." She says, "It's expensive and landlord says we can take part of it out of next month's rent." I say, "That's nice, but I'm not paying for that." "You have to." I say, "Actually, I don't. I didn't know you were getting the plow guy and I don't even use the driveway." The landlord says, "If service is performed on shared parts of the property, you should split the costs." She says, "See, you have to." My eyes narrow as I turn back to look at her. He's like, "You've made it very clear that it's not my driveway. I'm not allowed to park in it. I had to make my own parking space, so you can pay for your own driveway." BN was speechless. She had really thought I would have just done what she wanted. The landlord says, "You made your own parking space?" I say, "Yes, I've been told since I moved in that I'm not allowed to park in the driveway, and I'm not allowed to block her car in at any time. She's yelled at everyone who's come here to visit me that is parked in the driveway, even if they are just stopping by for a few minutes." BN finally looked ready to re-enter the fight, but landlord speaks first. The landlord says, "Thank you, enjoy the rest of your night." I smiled at them, closed my door, and locked it. I could hear BN try to argue with the landlord, and could even hear her walk up and down the steps wanting to knock on my door again, but landlord was firm. She had to pay for the bill herself. And after that, she had to let me park in the driveway, too. Hey, if you're gonna hog the whole driveway, you gotta hog the whole maintenance cost of it. Yeah, it kinda sucks. Where I'm living, I live with a roommate, and we have a really big driveway, but it's very narrow, and it can only fit like 1 car down it. So I'm pretty much just forced to park on the street all the time as my roommate uses the whole driveway. But he's been out of town for a while, so I get to use the driveway for once. Okay, now the question of the day is, what's the fastest way you've seen someone ruin their life? Have you heard of Pro Jared or James Charles recently? So a guy from my school went to rob a corner shop at knife point. He pulled up with his push bike, went into the store and threatened the shopkeeper with a knife to give him all the money in the register. The shopkeeper refused, and the robber was too much of a wuss to do anything, so he grabbed a pack of gum and ran out. 20 minutes later, the robber realized he left his bike behind in his panic, so he went back to get it. This was at the same time the police were questioning the shopkeeper on the incident. They swiftly arrested him there and then. I think he got 2 years for stealing gum at knife point. Oh man, it sucks, but it's so funny. I mean, that is something that I've thought about before. I always think like, you know, it seems like it'd be easy to just rob a place. Like, I don't know why people don't do it more. But then you realize, like, you know, they're risking their life, they're risking their freedom. And if you're robbing a convenience store, you're probably going to get less than $100, best case scenario. So, yeah, you'd be much better off just getting a job. A lot of the responses on this thread were just about, like, robbing places, so I've tried to get some variety. In less than 5 years, one of my cousins was married twice to 2 equally horrible people and blew through 2 inheritances. He and his first wife trashed a house my grandmother let them live in for free, and got mad when she asked him to pay for the repairs. He's now completely alienated from the family, including his parents, and disowned. Well, was there any sign in this story that that person had a good life before all this happened? Because he doesn't sound like the smartest guy. My friend got married right after high school. He left for boot camp and deployed soon after. Gave his wife power of attorney. She destroyed his credit and put him $200,000 in debt in 8 months. They divorced, but his CO advised him to just give her whatever she wants to keep her quiet. So now he's also paying alimony. It sucks because he only joined the military to pay for college, but now he's afraid he won't be able to afford it, even with a GI Bill. Man, I really don't understand the legal system, how guys end up having to pay alimony even when they're the ones that got screwed over. I guess, don't commit to marriage until you're really sure about it. Crystal meth over 2.5 months. My long ago neighbor had an Audi, a crotch rocket, a beautiful classy home, furnishings, and a great job. Only to end up with a folding chair and nothing else. Very sad to watch. He was a nice enough guy before the fall. Drugs are bad, okay? You shouldn't do drugs. Yeah, I've noticed with a lot of the stories from this thread is if you pick up these hard drugs, you're either going to get caught and get thrown in jail and ruin your life that way, or you're gonna do the drugs until you're out of money and you lose everything you have and ruin your life that way. So, I mean, nothing really good can come out of it. And the final one is drop everything and all ambitions in his own life to try and help his girlfriend pursue hers. She lived overseas. It did not end well. Well, what did we learn from all of this? Don't get mixed up in the wrong relationship, don't do drugs, and don't try to rob somebody. Well, that about does it for today's stories. I almost feel like these videos are turning into like a daily Today on the Internet kind of show. I mean, I don't pre-record these or anything. Like, I record it, and then I edit it, and then I publish it, like, directly in that order. Like, when I wake up in the morning, I have no idea what's going to go into my videos. It's only until I get on the internet that I decide that. But everybody seems to be liking it so far, so thanks to everybody who's been watching and commenting and liking all the videos, so I will talk to you guys tomorrow.